Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon Live, and we're doing a late night Word Balloon. And happy to welcome Greg Rucka back, as always. Great to see you, buddy.
Always good to see you, man. That
And
that picture of Chaikin that rolls past, man, that is absolutely quarantine Chaikin if ever I've seen one. Um,
he's only gotten woolier. Him and Walt Simonson. I always say Walt Simonson, it's like live from the Rock of Eternity. Shazam, everybody. It's just like his beard is like
right,
his head's become very triangular with that beard.
That's good. I like that. I like that. I'm down with that. It's not too late here. You got the late night.
Well, we're going coast to coast. You understand?
Yeah. So yeah, but just past 8 o'clock here in lovely Under Siege, Portland. So there you go.
Yeah. Honestly, Greg, like people have asked me to ask Portland friends, for a reading on how everything is going. Yeah, I mean, is it a really small area? How much is it affecting?
There was a great little graphic that I think Matthew Clark created, and he put up on his Instagram today. And he is EMCEE artist on Instagram. And what he did was he took a map of the city, and the map is highlighted, and then he put a little, and it is a tiny freaking pinpoint dot where all of this is going down. So anybody who has ever worked in journalism knows this, and anybody who has ever worked in television or film knows this. And frankly, most people who have ever seen a movie or a television show know this, but they forget it, right? Which is, you're looking at a set, right? And the way a set works is that I only show you this much of the thing. In the same way, you don't know if I'm wearing pants, right? Because all you're seeing is this much of me.
And we don't want to know.
And so CNN or Fox News in particular shows footage on a street with, people shouting or marching, or they show the side of a building covered with ACAB graffiti, and what they want is for the rest of the country to extrapolate that this is the entire city. It's not the entire city. It is confined to the area around the Justice Center downtown. All right. It is literally confined to about 6 square blocks most. Okay. There are protests and demonstrations throughout the city, but the stuff that, is getting tear gassed, where people are being shot by literally the secret police and being abducted by the secret police, is this tiny little pocket of Portland. It makes it seem like, the whole civic authority has collapsed, and that, we've got starving little white babies, lying in the gutter, in their own filth. And it's just, that's just not what it is.
Cool.
And the implication that the civil authority is broken down, that fire engines aren't responding to fires or whatnot, it's garbage. It's just garbage. I walk every day, and I run pretty much every other day. And where I am is about maybe a 1.5 2-mile walk from here to get across the river to get to that part of downtown. And in my neighborhood, you wouldn't know it. There's definitely a tension throughout the city, and there's definitely this sense of really grim foreboding. But, the idea that, that there is some mythical terrorist organization called Anti-Fascist, which we can talk about separately, that is running rampant through Portland, is bullshit. I mean, it's not true. It's a lie. It's patently not true. The mere fact that the idea of being anti-fascist is, in some way problematic. The only people it's problematic to are fascists. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a binary state. You're either fascist or you're not. And if you have hit a point where you think fascism is good, you're the problem. being anti-fascist is not the problem, and standing up to fascism is not a problem. It's a necessity. It's a moral and ethical imperative. So yeah. So how are we doing? Well, it's never fun being made into the test case for Hissy Fitler's attempt to take over.
Well, Plan B is Chicago. We're right there.
Oh yeah, no, you guys are getting it this weekend. So is Seattle. But that's the thing. It's like, what do these places all have in common? They're Democrats. They're Democratic seats. So this is nothing but a thuggish bullshit play to try to inflame the base, and frankly, to try to start a fight. And the result of this is going to be people are going to die.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be feds. The people who are going to die are going to be the protesters who are out there. Yeah. But for God's sakes, I woke up this morning to find out they tear gassed our mayor.
I saw that.
And it's crazy. It's just it's crazy. So, and the fact of the matter is, I think what is more interesting about this is that it is a galvanizing thing. It is not having the desired effect, right? Because the base that he's got, which is shrinking, that base that's not going to leave was already inflamed anyway.
Absolutely.
So this isn't going to win him people.
Right.
But between, the 12th, 13th, 14th, when the first story started coming out about people in body armor without identification, grabbing people off the street, throwing them into a van, not identifying themselves, not telling them they're under arrest, right? So this is a kidnapping, driving them around, unloading them in a place where they don't know where they are, subjecting them then to illegal searches to try to get their phones, right? And so on. In the time that has started, the demonstration numbers have quadrupled. It's not scaring people away. What it's doing is bringing more people out.
Right.
So, yeah. How is Portland doing? It's going to take more than this to hurt Portland.
Good to hear.
All it's doing right now is really, really pissing us off.
I hear you, man. Well, yeah, and we're in anticipation piss off mode here in Chicago. Yeah. So, Brett, the comic fan should know, fighting fascism is a moral imperative. Yeah. Captain America teaches that constantly, indeed.
Well, and Brett's absolutely 100% right. This is why when people, and I've gotten this criticism all throughout my career, don't put politics in my comics. And it's like, then you're not paying attention to what it is you're reading.
Yeah.
I mean, literally from the word go, that's what these things have been. That's what science fiction is, man. You can't call yourself a Star Trek fan, in particular an original series fan, and then be like, oh, well, I don't like this new Star Trek. They made it political. It's like, what were you? Did you even, do you understand? Here's an idea, metaphor. Have you ever understood metaphor? So
don't open the Star Trek can. Great.
Yeah, well, but we go there because it's the same thing, right? One of the beauties of speculative fiction is that we talk about things that are of import in the now in a way that perhaps allows us to recontextualize them and reapproach them.
100%.
So, when the Martian Manhunter talks about a war between the Green Martians and the White Martians, he is talking about a racial genocide, right? I mean, and if you don't get that, okay, but it's there on the page. Nobody's making it up. And you didn't have any problem with it, before you decided, oh, God, it's political. So anyway.
No, I'm with you, man. I remember that great interview that we might have even talked about it before that Mike Wallace did with Rod Serling. And, and Mike Wallace is like, I don't understand what you're doing in this science fiction stuff. Aren't you playing? Isn't this lightweight? And so it's like, no, this is where I can talk about issues and avoid controversy because you cloak them in aliens or the future. Sure.
And you are able to, in that way, I think it makes it I actually think it is a lovely, lovely way to teach. I mean, if you think about most comic book fans or most science fiction fans, we come to this stuff, or fantasy or whatever. We come to these genres actually fairly young, right? We adopt these things very early. And we don't adopt them very early because we go, oh, Day of the Dove is about a null-sum war, right? And we don't look at, Balance of Terror and go, on both sides, I mean, Balance of Terror is a great example, right?
One of the best.
It's about prejudice, right? It's about unfounded prejudice. It's about judging people on appearance, right? And it is also about how the other is not, right? I mean, that lovely line that, Sarek's character has at the end before the self-destruct is, and what is it? In another life, I believe we would have been friends, Captain Kirk.
That's exactly right.
And you come away from that moved when you see it when you're 8 or 10 or 14 or whatever. You don't necessarily go, oh, this is so profound, but you go, I am affected by this, and you carry that with you. And that's the beauty of this medium. And this is one of the reasons why, in particular, Comicsgate bullshit coming in and being like, oh, well, I don't like what you're saying. It's like, well, too bad. This is what the medium's always been saying, man. It's always been saying it.
I hear you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. And nobody here should be claiming to have reinvented the wheel. This was done long before we arrived.
100%.
So.
Absolutely. It's very funny that you mentioned so much original series Star Trek, because Tom King is like, hey, can we do a rewatch podcast where we start watching the original series? I'm like,
oh, yes, you're
talk
there.
about Star Trek? Me? Never.
Yeah.
Sorry, wrong guy.
Yeah.
And Mike Cronenberg is going to be on it as well, and Franco from Tiny Titans.
That'd be a lot of fun, man.
So yeah, it's going to be pretty funny, man. Exactly. Yeah. So you might have to guest star on a certain episode. And if I could, before we get down to business, Friday night, tomorrow night, because we've already got tonight that we're going to have fun with. But originally, I thought I asked the Bensons and Tom King, hey, you want to hang out and just do an easy chill kind of episode? Maybe we'll do movie trivia or whatever. And the Bensons are like, why don't we do like an after hours like at San Diego, with San Diego going on right now at home and all the panels? And I'm like, well, that's a great idea. And I'm like, well, let's just call it Word Balloon After Hours. And they're like, oh, no. And they had a different name. And then here it is. It's John
Con.
I got to be honest. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right.
No, I dig.
So Tim Seeley drew that.
The question is, can you sustain it throughout the rest of the convention?
No, it's going to be multiple days.
Yeah,
so, this is like us standing in the Hyatt lobby, or
I remember everybody's got to bring their own drink now.
Exactly. I remember a night in the Gaslamp District where it was you and Jen and Victor Gershler. Gershler was smoking a nice big cigar and hanging out. I forget where we were in front of, and just a nice little chill.
Yeah, he does enjoy those cigars. That must have been years ago. I haven't done
10 years ago.
Yeah, it has to be. I don't think I've done San Diego since, I think 2011 was the last year that I really did the show. I was there last year because of the stuff around Stumptown.
Sure.
But it was literally do Stumptown stuff, leave.
I understand.
I prefer these more intimate get-togethers that we have, John.
Well, as always, I appreciate you coming on. And like I told you, this is amazing. We already have questions. So people are continuing to comment. So I will dive into the questions. And please, I said Old Guard and Lois Lane and Lazarus, but certainly Black Magic.
Yeah, it's open.
Past,
it's open season.
Absolutely. It's a Rucka debrief. Absolutely, man. So Craig Gorman, this is a great question that literally obliterates us. Greg, one of the great runs on Detective Comics, which does not get the respect it deserves. Lois Lane was a great comic, so much so that my wife is reading and enjoying it and asked for more Rucka. And he plans to revisit Lois Lane. I know you just wrapped up. And if so, will it continue with the politically relevant theme? We need more books like Lois Lane in this political climate.
I do not have anything on deck with DC at the moment. So, I mean, God, I love writing Lois. And she is so amazing. And I am absolutely not at a never say never point. But I honestly am also feeling that, I turned 50 this year.
Hey.
Thank you. And that means that I've been working for DC for about 25, off and on. And I kind of feel like, I mean, I've had an extraordinary privilege opportunity to play with all these wonderful toys for as long as I have.
Yep.
And it's not like there ain't nothing more I could say, but there is a piece of me that kind of feels like maybe it's time I sat down and shut up and let some other people play with the toys. I kind of feel like that kid who came over to DC's house and then hogged a whole bunch of the toys for a while. So I like I said, I'm not about to say no or never. But I don't have anything on deck with them at the moment. It looks like the Black Label stuff sort of died away. And that's on me. That's not on them.
Okay.
I just couldn't get Diana's daughter to work right for me. And it may be that in, the next 6 months or so, I'll suddenly figure it out and then write 3 scripts and then send them to Mark Doyle, who will say, well, you're a day late and $1 short, but let's see what we can do. But beyond that, there's really nothing outstanding. And it's a weird place for me. When you work as a freelancer, which technically is what I am, the idea of not chasing the job is a difficult one, especially in this time and place. I am fortunate that I have other things that are allowing me to provide for my family, But yeah, I mean, I'm really glad to hear that Lois has resonated so well, because again, we talk about, people got nervous. Oh, Rucka's going to talk about politics and Lois is going to get thrown out of a White House press briefing. And it's like, sorry, guys. I was asked on another podcast, on Mimi Chan's Culture Chat podcast, which I've been talking to her about weekly.
Yeah.
And somebody had asked, if you were to do Gotham Central today, how would that be different? And a friend of mine, Andrew Bowdovich, had used the phrase propaganda a couple of days ago, which I hadn't encountered. I don't know if he found it from somebody else. Whoever came up with it, it's a great phrase for it. And I don't think what Ed and I ever did in Central was propaganda. It wasn't aggrandizing, and it certainly wasn't a whitewash of policing. But I think, again, if I were to turn around and do a Central today, you can't write a Gotham City that is not in. You can't write cops in Gotham, especially predicated on the foundational truth that most of the cops in Gotham suck. They're horrible, and not end up talking about a lot of what we are actually talking about now.
Sure.
So Cully and I have an idea that we came up with 2 years ago that still is as relevant now as it was, that we keep teasing out. And it's just, so there's always more to be written, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be writing for DC anytime in the near future. I've got a story coming out in the Detective Anniversary issue, which I actually did final letters on today. And it's gorgeous. Eduardo Rizzo is just unbelievably good.
That's awesome.
And that's not a bad one for me to sort of step away for a little while if that's where I am. So
okay, yeah. It's interesting that your pitch for Black Label was about Diana's daughter, because I just spoke to Kelly Sue, and the thing that she's got going is about Hippolyta. Mm-hmm. So isn't it interesting that we're getting kind of, that those ideas are percolating in terms of...
Well, and Kel, had such a fire lit for that one, because she came out of the Wonder Woman movie like, and wanting to basically fix that story her way. So I get it. I get where she's coming from on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing it simply because the art that Phil's posted has been stunning, if nothing else. So,
and if all goes well, Phil Jimenez will be part of John Con.
There you go.
There you go. So tomorrow night, and looking forward to talking to Phil. I haven't talked to Phil in a while.
I haven't seen him in quite a while.
Brilliant artist. Yeah. So Charlie Lewis, can you talk in huge spoiler detail about the original
Old Guard
Force Multiplied? Yeah. When did you write it in comparison to rewrites of the movie? How did you write the same yet now more divergent stories?
So I was doing the screenplay and working through the screenplay when I started writing Force Multiplied, and Force Multiplied suffers actually from me. I was so deep in the movie at one point and working Force Multiplied that there was bleed, and the continuities are different. Like for the Old Guard movie, that the movie that's out now, it maps very tightly to Opening Fire, to the first story. Force Multiplied would be a horrible movie. I mean, it's just, I think it's a fine story, and I think Leo did a beautiful job. But as a film, it would be an absolute dismal failure. And the reason I say this is because, and if you've read it, you may have noticed there's really not much of a plot. It is mostly a character exploration. It doesn't really manifest a plot until issue 4, and I resolve it in issue 5. So a lot of the ideas of Force Multiplied, should we do a sequel, knocking on all wood.
Indeed.
A lot of the concepts and a lot of, in particular, a lot of what's going on between Noriko's motivation and Andy carries over to the Quinn-Andy relationship in the movies. But I literally got in trouble at one point, and it was writing issue 5 where our editor, Alejandro Arbona, came back and he said, "You're using the wrong continuity. You're using movie continuity here."
Oh, shit.
And I was like, oh, God, I am. Because movie continuity is Andy meets Quinn, and then she and Quinn meet Lycon.
Mm-hmm.
And comics continuity is Andy meets Lycon, then meets Noriko. And also, if you read Opening Fire carefully, it's interesting because one of the things that the film seems to assert is that there are only this many immortals and have only ever been this many. The movie says there's only ever been Andy and Quinn, and there was Lycon and he died, and then there's Nikki and there's Joe and there's Booker and now there's Nile, and that's it. And if you read Opening Fire carefully, Andy never says that. Andy never says this is a finite number. She talks about some of the people she's known, and she talks about Lycon and she talks about Noriko. But she is by no means prescriptive in saying that, and that's it, it's only ever been these two and everybody you see now. So there's an interesting tension that is arising because of movie continuity versus comics continuity. And, Leo and I are sort of sniffing around the third one right now, and I'm getting ready to write it. And I've always had an idea for what that third one was going to, I've always known how this ends. How I get to the ending has always been the question. And again, trying to navigate between these two continuities is it is proving to be a little bit exciting right now. And it's interesting also because, the Old Guard, the Opening Fire was very successful as far as an Image comic book goes. The audience who know that material at this point is it got to be something like less than 0.5% of the people who have seen the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the crazy skew, right, is, it's so trying to be true to the comic story and trying to be true to what's going on in the movies are actually very different things, but there's a lot of cross-pollination.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And have you gotten real metrics from Netflix, Greg, on the movie?
Yeah, I mean, they released something like last week, I think last Friday, they released that they were forecasting 74 million households.
That's so great.
It will have seen it within the first month.
That's
and
amazing.
That comes out to somewhere between 150 and 200 million people.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and by any cinematic metric, and I am the first to admit, hey, we have benefited from something that nobody should have benefited from. COVID did us a favor here.
Sure.
We are maybe the only people in the world who can say that. So there's an odd guilt to being like, we've got the #1 movie because there aren't any other movies. The flip side of that is that if the movie sucked balls, people wouldn't be watching it.
100%, Greg. Yeah.
So,
no, absolutely, man. And truly, I haven't sat down. I've got Apple, and I haven't sat down to watch Greyhound yet. I watched the first 10 minutes, and I told you my buddy Chuck, I'm like saving it for him because I know he's going to want to watch it too.
Yeah,
exactly, man. So yeah, it's like he's my Redbox guy, and and occasionally we go to the movies as well. But yeah, it's like. It's like, oh no, I think he's going to want to watch that, and I'm like, all right, I can wait. I'll sit down with Chuck and watch that and everything. But yeah, no, it is again taking us out of this terrible situation as a media person and a broadcast nerd, and just being interested in what's happening in pop culture. It is very fascinating, to watch this transition, and the unfortunate news that it looks like theaters are going to stay closed even longer, and the different declarations that. The Chris Nolan film Tenet is not ever going to be on demand first. It will definitely be in theaters. If they have to shelve it for a year or so, so be it.
Yep.
So it's very, very interesting. And
they're pushing back Wonder Woman 84 again, I believe. And so
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's a shame. I do miss seeing, new movies in the theater. I wouldn't go to an old movie.
And we'll get to. It will come back. It's just it's going to be a while, and the world's going to look different when we do it.
100%.
So
yeah. All right. Here's a good call back from Scott Pollard. Any chance of more Jad Bell novels?
Oh,
love Alpha and Bravo.
Thank you. So now we know who it was who bought them. All right. So, and I think I've explained this before, but I will tell this story again.
Yeah.
So wrote Alpha, and then my editor left Mulholland. And I became what is called in publishing terms an orphan. And I got picked up by another editor who didn't love me. And I wrote Bravo. And I think Bravo is honestly one of the best novels I've written. I think it's up there with Critical Space and Walking Dead and The Last Run. I really am very proud of it. And just before the novel came out, my father passed. And at the same time, my publisher Mulholland, which is an imprint of Hachette, got in a knife fight with Amazon. And like it or not, Amazon is the major metric of selling books.
Yeah.
So my book dropped, and Amazon quite deliberately pushed all of the Hachette's titles. They, #1, not discounted, and then #2, didn't promote them.
Interesting.
So I had started work on Charlie, and I was doing what promotion I could, and they were not backing the book. Mulholland did not back the book. And like I said, my father had died. And about a month after the novel came out, Mulholland reached out to my literary agent and said, so the book didn't perform the way we wanted it to. So we would like him to write something different for the next one. And like I said, I had notes on Charlie. I was getting ready to write Charlie. And I was not in a good place mentally or emotionally for obvious reasons. And my response to that was, that's not my fault. It's not my fault the book didn't perform. I did everything I could and everything I should, and I gave you the best book I could write at the time, right? And your inability to sell it due to not pushing it, not marketing it, not promoting it, and being in a knife fight with Amazon at the time is not on me. And on top of that, I've got an editor who doesn't talk to me, doesn't engage me, and doesn't want to work with me. So my feeling at that point was, fuck you and all who ride with you, and that'll be that. So the long and the short of that was, about a year later, I gave Mulholland back the advance on the book, and that was the end of my relationship with Mulholland.
Okay.
So part of the problem, to answer the question, is that Charlie was always meant to follow on Bravo, except Bravo was written now 5 years ago. So I don't, all other things aside, which I will come to in a moment, because there's a lot of other things to decide, I just don't know if that works. I don't know if I can jump back in to that same continuity, or if that's fair to the characters, or if I go, no, it's got to be later.
Sure.
So that's one thing. And the other thing is, I haven't written a novel since Bravo. I've written much smaller prose works. I've written some short stories that have been published. I wrote what they refer to as "quote unquote" middle reader Star Wars books. I've done 3 of those.
Yep.
But you know, I've got notes for a new Kodiak. I've got notes for an unrelated anything, and I have notes for Charlie. But writing novels is so painful, and the associations are so negative for me right now.
Interesting.
And it's very isolating. It's an incredibly isolating process. And one of the things that I love about comics, and frankly, one of the things I love about, you know, having now being able to say making a feature film, is that it's not isolating. It is collaborative. You know, I may sit in my room writing the script, but I can call Perkins up and I can say, Perks, you know, how are we going to, or I can say to Perks, so I'm going to give you 3 DPSs back to back in issue 10. And in them, you're going to need to explain the concept of the multiverse. And I don't want us using the traditional visual shorthand. So I'm going to send you a whole bunch of YouTube links about the physics of the quantum physics of actually the multiverse. And these are some of the equations I want to discuss. And now let's talk about how we do it. And, you know, he comes back and he says, ooh, smoke thing, and things like that. And, you know, I'm never alone when I'm doing a comic. And when I'm writing a novel, I am locked in a room by myself until I finish the son of a bitch. And that can be a real long time. And so I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if I'm going to write another prose novel. I really don't. I really don't.
Yeah. Jeez. No, that's shocking, Greg, but I understand. I totally understand. So we want you happy, man. That's all right. There's enough fucking misery in the world, man. I want you, at least while you're working, to be happy. Jesus.
Well, I do good work when I'm angry. I don't do good work when I'm miserable, I guess, is the thing we're looking at there. So yeah.
Well, the river's providing, obviously, right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of rage. Don't worry about that.
This is interesting. And yeah, Richard Logan, Charlize Theron would make a great Forever for the Lazarus series.
Actually, she would make like a great Savara Bittner. Like Forever needs to be
younger.
Like, yeah, in like her early 20s at the oldest.
Yeah.
But what Charlize proves is you can find an actress who is 6'2" and looks like she can murder you, and also can win an Academy Award. And that's one of the great things about Charlize, man, is she is really I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this. She is one of the most disciplined and focused people I have ever met. And like staggeringly professional. And everything on The Old Guard was about how do we make this movie the best movie we can make it. And in that, she and Gina, were very much on the same, it's one of the reasons you get what you get.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, I happen to, as people may have noticed in my work, have an appreciation of strong women. Indeed. So I didn't have any problem with this at all. I was like, yep, let's do it. I'm here. But I don't know if I talked about this last time. I mean, one of my fondest memories on that set is literally the location for Merrick's apartment was actually this home about an hour outside of London. It's a very fancy, like Russian oligarch owns it, Architectural Digest type home that he does not live in. He just rents out apparently to movies.
Wow. I figured for high rollers or whatever, for movies, he literally.
No, I mean, literally, the place was practically empty. You could have put whatever you needed in it.
Interesting.
But it's this house, and it was hot. I mean, I remember it was really hot in England. This was early July, and I'm standing out on the driveway, and it's got one of those curved driveways that'll go underneath the house. And I'm standing out on the driveway with my laptop on like the retaining wall at roughly eye level. And I've got Mark Evans, who's the producer right here. And I've got Charlize literally right here. And I'm literally doing a rewrite being like, does that? Yeah, that's that. And I love it, man. That's awesome. Because I love the collaboration. I love being able to work with people who will say, okay, that doesn't quite work. What if we try this? And oh yes, and this, and and I've always held that I'm never going to write anything that can't benefit from a rewrite. So I don't go into it with a lot of ego. I mean, I've got plenty of ego, right? Because I'm a writer.
Yeah, sure, it's your universe, man.
Well, and it's not only that. I mean, a writer without ego is a writer who never shows anybody what they write. Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
If I didn't have an ego, I wouldn't feel people should pay money to read it. So obviously, I think enough of my work that I am willing to expect, somebody to pay me to do it. But it's never, like I've never done anything where I've been like, perfect. We're done. So yeah, man. And like I say, that's for me. That's the night and day difference between doing serious, my own prose and my own comics. I do my own comics. I get to work with other people.
That's awesome. Here's a couple shout outs from Australia. Brett Harris, glad to hear you are well, Greg. And
Thank you.
It's 1:00. Don't tell my boss I'm watching.
I won't.
And Speedsy, g'day.
Hey.
Guard was freaking great.
I got a fresh jar of Vegemite sent to me recently. And I literally was like, I am not sure what my relation. This is the second one I will have gone through. So clearly it's working for me.
What does it taste like? I certainly know it from the Men at Work's on Down Under, but
yeah, it's very hard to explain, and you don't eat it straight, and that's the trick. I think Americans open it and they go, it looks like it's chocolate.
Right, black paste kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, or it looks like Nutella or whatnot. No, This is like this hyper salty, tangy, yeasty is a word you hear a lot, though I'm not sure that's the one that works for me. But you apply it with like, I put like my toast in the morning and then my fake margarine, stuff, and then this on it, and it's lovely. I mean, it's nice. It's salty. It's got a little tang. It's got a little zip. And yes, I know people are like, some people don't dig it, but I do also know that the fundamental mistake that people make, because I've made it, is to take a big heaping serving of it and slather it on the thing and then just try to eat it. And it's like, no, you will be drinking water all day. So, yeah.
All right, here's a compound thing from Jose Sanchez. I'm a big fan.
Hi, Eric. Yes, Vegemite tastes like your high school feelings of inadequacy and shame. But you had a very, very rough high school, Eric, and we know that. So.
Oh, you see it. That's good. You're much further down on the list here.
It's all right. I recognize certain names.
There you go. I'm a big fan. I read Lazarus first, and the first couple of pages got me hooked.
Cool.
After that, I dived into your stuff, and the consequence of that was getting the itch to write crime.
Very
comics.
cool.
So, any tips for writing crime comics?
You're talking to a guy who's, after 25, 30 years of doing this, still can't manage to write a good mystery. So, honestly, my first piece of advice is, if you're writing crime, that's not the same as writing mystery.
Right.
So know what it is. If you're writing a mystery, you are setting out different problems. If you're writing crime, what you're actually writing about is why the people you are writing about find themselves in the situation where committing the crimes they are committing are the reasonable courses of action, right? And there are any numbers of ways to approach that. There is, there's the death wish approach, right? Which is, horrible thing happened to me, I've been pushed beyond the law. There is and I cannot recommend this enough, if you just read nothing else, if you haven't already read Westlake writing as Richard Stark, pick up the Parker novels. The novels, not the graphic novels. Read the books first. Then you can go and love the comics as the adaptations they are. But Westlake, when he writes as Stark and is writing as Parker, is some of the cleanest, most efficient crime writing you will ever read. And as Westlake himself described it, if you read, there are two Westlake series that come to mind. There's him writing as Stark as Parker. And then there's a series that he wrote as Donald Westlake about a jewel thief named Dortmunder. And if you read the Dortmunder books, they're funny because Dortmunder is just a walking car crash. Like, the first novel in the series is called The Hot Rock because the same diamond ends up having to be stolen like 4 separate times in the course of the novel. And you read the Parker novels, and what you are reading about is, as Westlake described it, you're watching a man practicing his trade, and his trade is crime. And it is described with the same dispassionate objectivity as you would describe the plumber, clearing your drains.
Yep.
And I would argue there's probably not a greater American crime writer that I'm aware of. So look there. And then the question is if you're writing in comics or if you're writing in prose. And if you're writing in prose, set yourself, and these are just general writing rules, but I believe them. Set yourself windows, put your ass in the chair, and work for that amount of time, right? If it's going to be, I'm writing 250 words today, write the 250 words. And do it 6 days a week. Make it, I'm getting up an hour early to do it, or, it's the last thing I do before bed, or I do it on my lunch hour, or I do it when I get home before dinner. Make it manageable, but make it something that you have to reach a little bit for, and do it over and over and over again. It's the discipline that counts, because if you do that, you get better. If you do not do that, you will not get better. And if you only do it when you want to, you'll never do it.
Amen.
You got to do it whether you want to or not. And the other thing is write forward. Acknowledge that the first draft is probably going to be crap. All right? And that's okay. That's why it's called a draft. Don't get hung up on whether or not it's perfect. You've got to you've got to do the work. More than anything, you got to do the work. So, yeah.
I like all of that. That's awesome. Let's see here. Oh, that's fun.
We're trolling for more questions.
Well, yes, because again, I got so behind in everything.
No, it's okay. We've got a fun list here.
Oh, thank you, Speedsy. I appreciate that. Nice compliment for wordballoon. I thank you very much.
He's really good, man.
Any new stuff stories coming out Omnipress?
Yeah,
Omnipress, excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's Oni. Justin and I are gonna do a new one that, in point of fact, I should have started writing already, but Old Guard stuff ate a lot more time than I thought it would. So one of the goals is actually to get that underway in the next 2-3 weeks. We're gonna do it as an OGN as opposed to individual issues, and but yeah, we've had this fifth story in mind for actually a couple of years, and I think we're ready to do it. So yeah, there is more coming.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I'm going to cross-pollinate again. It's that Old Guard comics to movie question. I don't know if Tuki's going to show up in this or not, for instance. I suspect no. I suspect I'm going to try to keep the continuity somewhat hermetically sealed.
Okay.
There you go.
That's awesome. Well, while we're on Stumptown, like, what input do you have for season 2?
Not a lot. You know, I had a lot of conversations with Kobe and with Jason Richmond and with Monica Breen, who came on in the second season as sort of co-showrunner, and she's running the writer's room with Jason. And had multiple conversations with each of them.
Okay.
About what I thought worked in the first season, what I thought hadn't, where I felt they strayed, where I felt it was important to reorient, and answering a lot of their questions. But the EP credit that Justin and Matthew and I share on it is very much, frankly, it's very much this is how we get you a little money. Every week there's an episode, and it's also a consultancy.
Understood.
So, and it's interesting, you know, when we talk about, say, doing something like Lazarus, Lazarus ain't going to be done without me in the room. I won't do it.
Excellent.
And part of that is because Lazarus has this, it's very complete in its form.
It's a big complex thing rather than,
right.
not that Stumptown is simple, but it is basic.
Right.
In terms of,
But what Stumptown is a story about the characters.
Yeah.
And once you have the characters, you take them wherever you want. And let's be honest, what Jason did is he took, in particular, Gray, and created a character far superior to anything I'd put on the page. Gray in the Stumptown comics is sort of an ineffective wannabe musician who moons after Dex. Because I don't have a lot of time for him because we're mostly following Dex. In a TV show, there's a lot more going on.
Sure.
So I'm perfectly happy to be like, as long as certain core truths remain, Ansel remains Ansel, Dex remains Dex. I am more than happy to, you know, I'm there. I'm in the bullpen if they call for me. But it is not at all an issue of, and I cannot stress this enough. This is not me going, oh, they pushed me out of my thing or whatnot. There is no bad blood here. You know, I think if I were grading the first season, me personally, I'd give it a solid B. I think there were some A+ episodes. I think there were some C- episodes. But I think, in fact, I know simply from talking to Kobe and Monica and Jason that not only are they all aware of it, but it is being more than addressed in season 2.
Cool.
And there's a reason why a lot of shows you go like, oh, you know, that first season was a little rocky and then it starts to find its legs. Guess what? Turns out there's a reason for that. They've got to figure out what it is and how they're going to work it. So,
okay.
All right. You search a question. I'm going to run really quickly and get something to drink.
No problem, man.
Nobody go anywhere. It's going to take me a minute.
No. It's all good. No, by all means, Greg. By all means, we're cool. We can hold court for a second. I've started watching the panels at San Diego, and I'll tell everybody that it's been interesting because you don't have the questions. They're a little too self-contained from what I see right now, but I am still intrigued enough to watch the ones I'm interested in. I'm glad I don't have to choose what to watch as far as San Diego panels go. So that's kind of fun. I was just talking about the panels that I've watched so far, the stay-at-home panels at Comic-Con.
I haven't done anything.
They're interested. No, it's great not having to choose. Oh shit, there's two things in conflict. Which one am I going to see? Because they're all sitting up there,
right? And you don't need to, stand in line at Hall H for 8 hours. So
yeah, and I never did anyway. Honestly, I that's awesome that Hall H generates the attention that it does and the amount of people that want to see that stuff. But yeah. I'm not a woo panel guy.
Yeah,
where all the people do is woo, and I mean that's awesome, and it's a great experience, and it's cool seeing the stars on stage. My favorite Comic-Con panels have always been, hey, it's 100 years of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Let's look at his work. Yeah. Stuff like that. The spotlight panels on creators, the interesting, and a lot of the academic stuff.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think that show is so successful, right? Is that it is there's something for everybody. You can find something there. So
100%, man. I always say, like, we could be at the same convention and have completely different experiences based on what we see and what we want to do, whether it's cosplay or anything else. No, I quite agree. Let's see here. Oh, here we go.
Which one? Well, that's, I'm glad I liked it too.
Well, that really, the Lois run was great, and a lot of great Renee stuff. And that's why I could see you saying this isn't a bad place to leave, because you got to play with some of your favorite characters that you work on.
Though I'm told that there are apparently some Kate Renee fans who are furious at me and think that what I have done in continuity have broken up Kate and Renee. And if that's what they think, I'm sorry, but that absolute Renee's a horn dog, man. If they think if anybody thinks that Renee and Alicia are gonna last, they're high. I mean, they're high.
That's fantastic.
So they shouldn't worry about that.
Well, and if I'll take one more moment then, because we mentioned Kate, Greg, I gotta ask, obviously, with all the changes, and I know that at the CW with Batwoman, God only knows where they're gonna go in this direction. And I honestly, I don't point any negative fingers at anybody. This change is intriguing.
Yeah. I will, again, I haven't watched the show, right? One of the things about work for hire comics is you can reinvent, in quotes, Batwoman and modernize the character and build the world around her, and then they'll make a TV show out of it, and they'll use everything that you did, and you don't get a penny, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I tend not to actually follow things like that because frankly it gets a little painful.
Sure.
It'd be like, but that's not my Kate. That's not the way I would have done it. So for me, it's an easier defensive move to sort of step back. Now, that said, I am well aware that Ruby departed. I'm well aware that they have cast a new woman. And I don't remember her name. I remember reading the announcement. And they can do a lot with it. I have no idea what they will do with it. I mean, no idea whatsoever. So, I wish them success. And the most important thing there is, and I think I need to make this clear too. Just because I'm not watching it doesn't mean it's not good or other people shouldn't enjoy it.
Sure.
Right. Well, you say sure. There are people who will extrapolate that is some sort of indictment. It's not an indictment.
I'm with you, buddy.
And I am the last person to turn to somebody and look, I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there people love that I think stinks. All right. If they love it, great. Enjoy it. Not for me. Right. I don't want to play games where it's like, well, if you like that, that somehow means you are, you are morally inferior. I don't have any interest in that. So this is why I feel it necessary to be really clear on this. People are loving the show. Great. And I wish them every success, but it's just like, yeah, I'm not involved, man. I don't know what to tell you.
I hear you, man. Here's another reach back. This is good. Reading Electra and Wolverine Gamer by Greg and Yoshitaka Amano. I was wondering if he could talk about the experience and why the format of prose and splash pages never took off.
Well, I think to the second, it's because that book was exceptionally expensive for Marvel. Because Yoshitaka Amano weren't cheap. And then they didn't read the contract very carefully, and they gave me a really good royalty rate. And so I think they just never did anymore because they're like, well, this isn't cost effective. But man, that was so long. That was back when I could write prose and be like, I'm just typing. It's easy. So, it was back when I was young and didn't know what I was doing, I suppose. It is an interesting question because it's not a book, right? It's a novella with illustrations by Amano. And the illustrations were entirely picked by Amano, right? I wrote, the manuscript was sent. We got the illustrations back. They bound it up and put it out, and there you go. That book is really hard to find these days, so I'm kind of tickled.
That's cool. Now, is Yoshitaka Amano, is that any relation to Jeff Amano or no?
I have no idea.
Okay. Ben Percy wants you to get back to writing novels and says that he says right here, I dig your novels, Rucka, don't stop. Sometimes the slow isolation of the novels is good medicine. Busy collaboration of comics and screenplays.
Thank you, Mr. Percy.
So Ben Percy, also someone else that will be on.
Yeah, that was very kind of you. I hope you're doing well, man. We have not seen each other in years.
I'm excited to get him on, man. I've been meaning to talk to Ben, and it's only going to be briefly tomorrow night. But I'm looking forward to getting to know him better in a future long form word balloon.
You will be glad you do, John.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
That is very, very nice of you to say. And to be honest, Ben, I'm getting closer to it. And I can feel myself getting closer to it. The other big thing is that they take a lot of time. And I'm not one of the big problems I had in my novel writing career was that as my novel writing career was supposed to be taking off, was also when my comics career was taking off. So I was perpetually trying to write monthly issues while also working on a novel. And that meant that the novel writing was really slow because you can schedule a novel far enough out that it's easier to push. You can't really call up DC and say, yeah, I know you guys wanted an issue of Adventures Superman this month, but sorry, it's going to be next month.
Yeah, not feeling it right now.
Well, they'll be like, that's great, you're fired. Here's your hat, what's your hurry? We like it when it's good, but really what we need is done. And that's the nature of monthly comics, man. That's how that animal lives. So
understood. Aldo, can you talk about the experience co-writing 52? What was the process like writing the story with the other writers? Do you feel you took away any writing or storytelling lessons from that experience?
Yeah, I mean,
that was you, Grant, Mark Waid, and Jeff Johns.
And there's one other person who always gets left out.
Oh, and would that be Keith Giffen doing breakdowns?
It would be Keith Giffen because Keith was not only doing breakdowns. He wasn't actually writing script. He definitely had a story input and a presence.
Cool.
So he gets forgotten
No,
because
I
he's
appreciate
not one of the
clarification.
4 writers.
Yeah. No, and I also
So-
think is a guy that, as a creator, only is talked about as an artist, and it's you forget how good of a plot man he is.
Oh no, he is just a terrific writer. So that is a fairly complex question. Let's try to answer it in pieces. What was it like? It was the best worst experience I've ever had. All right. It was 18 months of an unrelenting, unyielding pressure cooker. If a monthly comic has to be ready every month and a weekly comic has to be ready every week. And every week we were working on it, and every week we were having a call, and once every couple of months we were all meeting in the same place and doing a check and breaking stuff down, and then you were always dealing with curveballs, and then you were trying to figure out, well, how many pages do you need for this month, and if you don't do it this month, do you do it next month? And how much can you trust Grant to do what he says he's going to do? And that was the Grant problem. That was always the Grant problem. And the Grant problem is this: Grant would say, we because we'd have all our plots broken down. We had a master document that I had created that would be like A plot, B plot, C plot, D plot. And then you would have these conversations where Grant would be like, "Oh no, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it."
Oh shit!
And you would be like, "Uh-oh." I was like, "What are we gonna get? What are we going to get?" And invariably, you got something that was like, "This is amazing." But sometimes you'd be like, "Yeah, but I need to know what you're doing to do the thing I am doing."
Yeah.
So now the back half of that question is, yeah, man, I learned from everybody on it. I mean, nobody does bombastic superhero like Jeff Johns. All right. Jeff is the kind of writer who, he's the kind of writer where if he's writing a fight in a hall of mirrors, there will not be an intact piece of glass anywhere at the end of that fight. All right. And in comics, his ability to embrace that is an incredible thing. That he is always aware that the budget is limitless. And you're talking to a guy who's always worried about, whether or not the shoelaces are right on a character. So being reminded of that and pushed towards that is always good. Grant, I just said, watching an inventiveness with the form and the storytelling, the sequence. There's a sequence in one of the weeks where the characters are in space and they're talking to each other and there's no oxygen. So what you get are these empty white balloons. And that was Grant, and it's That's fantastic. Awesome. It is such a great visual.
Was Grant's scene, forgive me, the when they try to resurrect Sue Dibney with that little like scarecrow kind of thing, and you see, oh, good, because that's great to hear, Greg, because
that's Wade.
Man, I'll tell you, that was one of the best and like most tragic moments of 52 is that scarecrow representation of Sue and poor Ralph. Yeah.
And Wade, and he's the last one to list here.
Yes.
I don't think I've met anybody else in the industry who understands. No, there's only one other person. Arguably, I would put Mark Waid and Matt Fraction side by side on understanding the architecture and technique of what a comic book panel is.
Wow.
And the quintessential Mark Waid panel is in week 52 when we had a page where it was just each panel was wrapping up, and it was the alligator boots, right? That the boots made out of Sobek. And that is quintessential Mark Waid. What can you in one panel will tell you everything you need to know.
That's fantastic.
And that's Mark. So yeah, there you
You know,
go.
when you and Mark wrote at Marvel, and I want to say it was Spider-Man,
Yeah, we did
Daredevil,
the Spider-Man,
Punisher.
Daredevil, Punisher crossover.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I thought that was great. And I loved hearing you guys in that telephone press conference we did and hear what you each learned from each other working together and stuff. It's
no, he is the professor emeritus of comic storytelling. So
that's really interesting, man. That's very, very interesting. Let's see here. Rucka did a writing class to raise money during the pandemic for select few. Anyway, he can do that class again. And can we purchase the video? Possibly another way to raise donations. So that's an interesting idea, Richard.
Hero Initiative has approached me about doing another one, and I've actually told them that I will. We're trying to get schedules sorted. Until a couple days ago, I didn't know what my next couple weeks were going to look like. And now I do. So I'm able to actually sort of circle back around to people and make commitments. I will say, because I think that is a great idea, I would write to the Hero Initiative and make that suggestion.
That's a great idea.
And because they're, as I understand it, they basically sell quote unquote seats for the lecture hall. And then we do the class and they do record it. I think that is a great way for them to further leverage that fundraiser. But yeah, I am going to be doing another one. And look, I like teaching, and I don't get to do it a lot. So, you know, and in this pandemic, apparently all teaching is being done online anyway. So this is sort of perfect for me. Yeah.
Well, and conventions are being done online, and mentioning the Hero Initiative next month.
Yeah.
I'm involved, and Greg is involved as well, Mainframe Comic-Con.
Yep.
You know, and we're going to be doing that August 15th and 16th. And very excited to be working with the guys again. And it's all for Hero Initiative, 100% charity. And yeah, it's going to be done at the same time as New York Comic Con. But that's the great thing about doing this stuff live, but also having it up there as an evergreen video.
It makes it easy to, I do like the idea of Comic Cons that you can attend on your own schedule. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, man, I hear you. And again, whenever we come out of this, because live events will come back, it's going to be very interesting to see how the online component. I know it's not going away. I'm glad.
Well,
and you know,
this is never going to get undone now, and I think that's great. So yeah,
no, and this is a big part of Word Balloon now too. I mean, and as important as the audio is and everything, and it's fun to serve both.
Yeah, I mean, to digress a little bit, having had the pleasure of you know, doing the quote unquote Rucka debriefs with you now for
15 years, son.
Yeah, for a decade and a half. I really dig this format. I think this is a really cool way to do it. So it's a neat evolution.
I thank you, and then truly, it's because of people like you that make it successful. So that's cool. Here's a good one from Jay Ditchy, I want to say, or Dickey. What has been your favorite panel to be on at San Diego, or as your favorite to watch?
Wow. God, that's a hard one. What is my favorite to be on? There was, you know what it was? It was the 52 panel. It was the 52 panel. It was the year we were doing 52. That would have been my favorite one to be on. Just because, and it's hard to, I mean, if you weren't there for it, it's hard to imagine. But that, I mean, 52 was something really special. There were people taking, I mean, I believe there were actually Vegas odds that we wouldn't succeed.
I remember hearing that too.
That we weren't actually going to hit every week. And the energy behind it and the investment, and this was at a time, and I think, frankly, both DC and Marvel have failed at this dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. It was one of the last times I can remember that the whole of the DC universe felt like it was cohesive and connected and moving in the same direction. And it was the culmination of what had come before it, right? Infinite Crisis.
Yes.
And everything and all the miniseries that had come to feed into that then led into 52. And that was about a 2.5, 3-year period where DC was firing on all cylinders and was doing it in a way where there weren't fiefdoms, or at least I should specify this. From where I was sitting inside a fiefdom, there were no fiefdoms. Now you look at Marvel or you look at DC, and it's all fiefdoms. And it was balkanizing before we did Infinite Crisis and so on, and for a while we staved it off. But that balkanization has returned, and we've and I will say one of the things that I find really disappointing in mainstream comics is, and I say this as a guy who, clearly I owe my career to fans, but we also seem to have moved into this weird cult of personality where, in particular, the writers are really invested in inflating themselves over the work. It's one of the reasons why I always got cringy when people would talk about, say, the Rucka verse, right?
Okay, yeah.
I understand following my own, Greg's got a continuity and it threads through these things, but it's not my universe. It's the DC universe, and these are the things that I am interested. I'm interested in Renee Montoya's movement through the DC universe. So if that means that she moves into a Ruckaverse, does that mean that it's no longer the DC? You know what I mean?
I do.
And I think for any number of reasons, like as I said before, all writers have an ego. But I think that in comics, in some cases, that's getting dangerously out of control. When you are writing, certainly for the big two, it is incumbent on you to remember that your job, that the characters are always going to be bigger than you, and if you think you're bigger than them, you are going to eventually someday be in for a sharp, rude shock. People picked up Detective Comics not because I was writing it and Martin Bro was drawing it, but because it was Batman.
Yep. Yeah.
And people who didn't like what they were getting didn't pick it up anymore.
That's how I discovered you, Greg. Absolutely, man. Dante Hicks says he remembers that the 52 panel was recorded and released as a podcast through their DC Comics podcast feed. I got to hear it after it happened. Yes, yeah. And it was very interesting when that stopped. And I really felt that, and this is something that I think you do get in seeing convention panels. You really do get what the character of the publisher is at that moment, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And I would pay very close attention to what we get from San Diego, and also the DC event that's coming the weekend after Mainframe Comic Con. In fact, so I think that's very interesting, and I'm glad that Dante mentioned that, because I used to always look forward to those podcasts as well for panels that I missed, and they stopped happening, and I found that very interesting.
And I wonder if that was also because there was a proprietary issue with San Diego Comic-Con, right? There was a change at a certain point where they started recording everything.
Well, having done panels in previous Comic-Cons before and after that, there was always a release that we would sign, but it was, at least it was understood, and maybe because I was a small fish, that I'm like, you do realize I intend to release this as a podcast. And they're like, no, that's cool, just as long as we know. I honestly don't think so. And forgive me for thinking,
I don't know.
I think it was more controlling the message and that a give and take, a live give and take with fans, isn't controlling the message. And I think that's
See, and to me, I think that's I mean, you may well be right. In which case, boy, are they wrong. Because the only reason to go to a convention for me And the reason that I stopped going to San Diego, in large part, was that you go to a convention to actually interact with the fans.
Yeah.
And to take questions. Like, the best part of a panel for me is questions, right?
Yeah.
I want the questions from the audience, because
Agreed.
for every 9 questions that you've gotten before, there's always somebody who will ask you one. I mean, we've already had 3 or 4 where I've been like, wow, that's a good one. I don't know, you know what I mean?
I do.
So I and San Diego, just recently, in recent years, it became so media oriented that the comics presence in it was so downplayed in a way. It did not feel like it was a place to interact with fans, and you certainly couldn't interact with them on the floor, because if you stopped moving, you were in danger of losing your life.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I see Matthew William breaks Denny's quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. Sure.
Yeah.
Denny had a great quote about being the curators of shared myths and folklore. So there you go.
And see, I actually think now I'm going to do Old Man Shouts at Cloud. I feel in large part that's why DC, and to a lesser extent Marvel, have really lost their way recently. That they chase what they think is going to be really cool, and they have not given due consideration or thought as to the core of what these myths are and the core of what these characters are. And this goes, for instance, and I bring this up because let's just put it this way. I will not be surprised if in Wonder Woman 84 somebody's neck gets broken. Right? And when I did that story,
Max Lord.
Yeah, with Diana, that was never meant to be the end of my run. That was meant to be midway through, and then I got fired off the book. And for better or for worse, that firing meant that the true north of the character got broken. Because the only reason I had done that was that there was a story coming out of it to answer it. And instead, what they did is they went for, here's a thing that's really cool, and now we're going to ignore it and move on. And it's like, well, we got a problem then. You know what I mean? This ain't right. So.
No, I understand, man. No, and I honestly, we've talked about it before, and then you've talked about it at comic book panels. It's a shame that we didn't get the Trinity. I mean, that's kind of the implication of 52 itself, that the events of Infinite Crisis and the lines that were crossed kind of put the 3 at odds with each other.
Right. And one of the fundamental premises of Infinite Crisis was that when Diana, Bruce, and Cal aren't working together, the DC universe doesn't work. Bad things happen.
Yep.
When those 3 are not all working together.
Yep.
When they cannot trust each other. And to have had Diana do something that fundamentally violates that trust and then not tell the rest of that story, that was damaging. I mean, there's no way it's not damaging. And I resent like hell to this day that, because I hate it when I see other people do it. When somebody drops into a run and then they go, oh, I'm doing 6 issues. And in these 6 issues, I'm going to murder this character. I'm going to rape this character. And I'm going to have a long lost child reappear. And now I'm gone. And that's a goddamn drive-by. That is doing a drive-by on a character. That is literally going, hey, I get to flip over in the whole apple cart. And it's up to you to clean it up. I'm out. And God, I love, there isn't a superhero I love more than Diana. And having been put into a position where I did a drive-by on her, man, I'm still pissed about that.
I'm happy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That still kind of makes me cranky. And
Well,
it was a while ago too, you know. So
yeah, no, I get it, man. Well, and that's why I'm glad that you and Matt and Brian in the Superman books are able to kind of explore. Okay, Clark's gone or not
yeah,
gone, but everybody knows now,
yeah,
and it's like great because that was to me the great mistake of Spider-Man and Civil War,
yeah,
that they rushed to put the genie back in the bottle as far as everyone knowing who Spider-Man was. And it's like, oh man, there are like a million stories that
yeah,
you guys need to address, from
yeah.
Doc Ock trying to woo Aunt May, and all of a sudden my greatest enemy is the woman, one of the women that I love. It's her nephew. Wait a, what the fuck does that mean? And shit like that.
Yeah,
So no, and then like I said,
there's a
you're
lot of ground to cover. But yeah, there's a look. We don't have the time. There's a whole other discussion that you and I can have about the problems in the curation of shared universes, of the Marvel universe, of the DC universe, of balancing the core truths and values of these characters and their value as commodity to their respective parent companies, and needing to, I mean, DC right now is operating literally, they've got a boss who tells them your job in the comics is to increase the value of these characters, right? It comes down to a monetary factor. It has nothing to do with love for the legacy or what they mean in the larger popular culture. It is simply make that character that much bigger so we can sell X many more units of Underoos.
wow. And is that coming
Well,
from above
oh
the
yeah,
publisher?
that's an AT&T thing. I mean,
Right.
that's and and nobody should be surprised by that.
Right.
I mean, nobody should be so, oh my God, the corporate entity that owns the publishing company is in it to make money. What a shock. And if you think that Disney ain't doing the same thing to Marvel, you're high. You know, the
Yep.
fact of the matter is comics don't make money. Not to these people, not in any significant way. Like AT&T looks at DC Comics and they go, we spend more money, in a weekend on our infrastructure support than you spend all year. So the bean counting there is about, so what are we getting back for our investment? And if the only thing you're getting back from the investment is moving comic books, then it's not a worthwhile investment. There just aren't enough people reading comics. There just aren't. So the money to be made is in the merchandising. The money to be made is in Arkham Knight video games. The money to be made is in selling statues and action figures and keeping the characters present so that when a movie gets made, inevitably derived from source material from the comics, right?
Yeah.
That money justifies the existence. So,
Well, I hope they continue to see that value as far as, being the IP laboratory that,
well,
you
in
know,
some cases they're going to need to, because if they stop publishing them, they lose the rights. For instance, my understanding is Wonder Woman has to remain in print. If Wonder Woman goes out of print, if there is not a Wonder Woman book, the Marston estate gets the character back.
that's
Well,
interesting.
guess what? They're going to make sure there's a Wonder Woman book.
Interesting. Well, and especially, and I know you're saying for your own purposes that the next Stumptown would be a graphic novel, and
Yeah.
I'm hearing that a lot. And again, this is something that whenever the new normal emerges, I do think the future of the monthly floppy
It's
is,
changing, and I
yeah,
love the format, but it's interesting. Eric Troutman, who floated by in the chat, and who I think is now probably run off to greener pastures, and I are working on something. And one of the things that we've been talking about with our artist collaborator on that is the format. And is it going to be standard floppy? Are we going to do it as a magazine? Are we going to do it, 64-page issues? How do we want to do it? And as much as I know comics retailers cringe at the idea of things that will not fit neatly in the racks, it's kind of exciting to say, wow, I mean, it'd be cool to do something in like a magazine size. Wouldn't that be neat?
The way Brubaker's been flirting with it with Criminal and things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be pretty cool.
No, I completely agree. Absolutely, man. All right, now here's an essay question from Stephen Ernest, and then I don't know if you have a thought on this. Why haven't the success of comic book movies resulted in people reading more comics?
It's called the direct market. I mean, you can't. When I was, like I say, I'm old now. I'm 50, but I remember, when I was 9, 10, hopping on my bicycle. I lived in this. I don't know how to describe it. It was this community. It was called Toro Park. It was just this residential areas where I grew up, in between Salinas, California, and Monterey, California.
Okay.
And I'd have a friend, and we would hop on our bicycles, and we lived at the west end of Toro Park. It ran east to west, and you could ride all the way down from the west. It was maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles, to the east end. And at the east end, there was a tiny little shopping center, a little gas station. There was a 7-Eleven and a pizza joint and a liquor store and like that. And one of the first comics I bought for myself, I bought in that 7-Eleven. And it was, in memory, I believe, and somebody can use Google Foo to find this, because I remember the cover very vividly. It is the issue of Iron Man where Tony has to confront his alcoholism. And I believe it may have been a Denny issue.
Okay.
And I didn't even realize that. But I remember seeing that cover and buying that issue for, 45 cents or whatnot, and taking it home with me, because there was a spinner rack where you could do that. And there ain't no spinner racks like that anymore.
No.
If you want a comic, you can leave having seen, Infinity War. But the only place to get a comic is a comic book store. And there are some fantastic comic book stores out there. There are some comic book stores that are inviting, welcoming, open, bright places. They're, I know of one in Lacey, Washington, that's frankly the community center. All right. It looks like a comic book store and it acts like a comic book store. And then you go inside and it's sort of the community center for most of Lacey, Washington and Olympia.
That's great.
Yeah. But for the stores like that, there are an awful lot of other stores that are small and cramped and smell like cat piss. And are being managed by a guy who takes it very personally if you're not there to buy, and gives you the hairy eyeball.
Absolutely.
And so, it's hard to get comics. Now you can get them digitally, but again, hard to find them.
I hear you, man.
I mean, you have to know where to look. And one of the things the publishers absolutely stunk at, is telling people where to get the comics. Because this movie studio doesn't care. Disney Studio doesn't care if you find the comics.
Yep.
Warner Brothers doesn't care if you find the comics. But goddamn, DC Entertainment should be able to, the end of Wonder Woman 84 shouldn't end with Wonder Woman will return in Wonder Woman 2022. It should go, read Wonder Woman's continuing adventures at your, local comic book store. Here's the, URL for comic book locator.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But they don't do that.
Nope.
And they won't do that.
Nope.
Which is asinine. If you
think
about it.
And it points to the fallacy, especially when Diamond had the shutdown. Prior to that, it was always, hey, this is a 3-prong commitment. Yeah. Publisher, store owner and direct
Yeah.
and distributor, and it's like no, the stores get screwed,
Yeah.
and they're at the whims of the publisher and the distributors.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and no, and you're right. I mean, good Lord, George Reeves, the old Superman show. Superman appears monthly in the pages of Action and Superman comics.
Yeah. And you know what? That sold comics.
Well,
and
literally, National produced the Superman show.
Yeah.
The publisher produced that show, not a network. The publisher,
right?
It was a syndicated show.
And I was watching one of the old Superman animateds yesterday. There was a link that somebody threw up on the Discord about, I guess, sort of AI upscaling to 4K for one of the Fleischers.
Oh wow!
And I watched it, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's a wonderful little Superman cartoon, but at the top of it, you had the publisher information, right? I mean, it says at the beginning, from the pages of the comic.
Yep.
You look at, for instance, the Nolan or Snyder approaches to DC's movies, and the last thing they want is for anybody to know that they came from a comic book. I mean, Nolan was so ashamed of it, that no, seriously, look at as much as you may love the movies, look at the incredible lengths they go to prove to you that they're not comics. Everything Batman does is perfectly realistic.
Interesting.
Right? He doesn't do anything that not a human being couldn't do. It's like, for God's sakes, if you don't know that you're watching a Batman movie, that's on you. Why are you afraid of it? It doesn't make sense to me. And this idea that, comics are pejorative, comics are not cool. I don't have a lot of patience for it.
I'm hip, man. Absolutely. And it is what it is. It's interesting. Now, a bunch of people have been asking, and it is something you've addressed before, but again, for the purposes of the people here, they wanted to know, is there a future for Queen and Country?
I have had notes for another QNC. It would be a QNC with DOPS, with Chase's DOPS. I can make that work. One of the big problems with Queen and Country is that it always ran very tightly to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And that element of realism to it means that there are certain suspensions of disbelief that you cannot make. Tara coming back to the job after 10 years or 12 years becomes viable. My bigger problem is I don't know what espionage looks like at this moment.
You always had people that you were able to lean on for research. Am I correct?
Yeah. And I had that because of a variety of connections or people who knew people. Most of those people have left.
Interesting.
And then on top of that, the CIA is a shambles right now. And I have no idea what SIS looks like under Boris Johnson's Brexit. And I don't know, this one got ignored. There was a report released this week about Russian interference in the promotion of Brexit. Like that was, Russia wanted it to happen. They wanted Britain out of the EU. And they got it. So when you look at that and you go, well, these are intelligence operations. These are things that actually, went down. That the election here in 2016, there was a lot, we know there was foreign interference, and we know Mitch McConnell is perfectly fine with that continuing to this day.
And another headline from this week regarding China and the Chinese consulate in Texas, burning records, and obviously we're told to leave and then evacuate. And yeah, that our spy cams managed to literally. I saw infrared footage
Yeah.
of the Chinese,
We're
destroying records.
Yeah, we're doing document burns.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know what espionage looks like right now. You get rid of, if Trump is out, in 2021, and even with, Johnson still, running around going, nobody pay attention to me. I'm goofy. Watch me undermine every democratic norm possible. Ha ha ha. Aren't I a buffoon? I know what espionage looks like there, right? I can imagine what it looks like in a 2021 in a post-Trump world.
Okay.
But if you were to sit me down and say, what are you going to write today? I'd be like, I have no clue.
Interesting.
I mean, I really don't even know what that op is. So yeah.
Wow. I know, man. Well, and I want to point out one of the inspirations for Queen and Country was a great 1970s British television show that Greg and I adore, The Sandbaggers. Chris Neatsman, another big fan, turned on because of knowing you and everything. And it's on Tubi. So if you've never, Tubi, one of the free streamers.
Is it?
And it has commercials. But I swear, guys, if you have never, and women, if you've never watched The Sandbaggers and you miss the dynamics of Queen and Country, you will find them in The Sandbaggers. It's 3 incredible seasons.
And you will also go, wow, Rucka didn't have an original idea in his head. and you will be right.
And that whole
I prefer to call it homage. No,
I understand. And yeah, absolutely, man. Is McIntosh's brother still alive, or is he no longer?
I honestly don't know if Lori's still with us.
Ian McIntosh, the creator of The Sandbaggers, for people who don't know,
disappeared in Alaska in '81.
And was a former intelligence person.
Yeah, and the question is whether or not his plane really went down, or if he decided, no, I'm divorcing my wife and I don't want to have to deal with this and I'm done.
Pretty amazing.
His brother believed that he faked it.
Wow.
And was furious with him. I get it through BritBox. We have a BritBox subscription.
Sure.
And you can also get the Sandbaggers through BritBox
without commercials. So that's nice.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to subscribe to BritBox because I can write it off because of the show.
Yeah.
But
well, that's the reason to do it. I will tell you, like, up there with the PBS interface is one of the worst app interfaces. It's like, was this designed by monkeys? What's the matter with you people? Why do you? This is not that hard.
There's so much other British programming that's available on the streamers I already have that I'm not watching.
I will tell you that now we're going to digress. BritBox has a great. I mean, it's got a ton of great stuff.
I've seen that.
One of our secret joys the last month and a half has been Jen and I have been working our way through me. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
We've been working our way through the David Suchet Poirot's.
Great. I know that's a great series.
And they've got them all. So, yeah.
You know what I just watched, speaking of Poirot, and I had never seen it, and it's very disappointing, is the ABC murders that Tony Randall did in the mid-'60s.
Huh. I haven't seen that version. Yeah.
And you know what's better is, and really I enjoy them a lot, are the Miss Marple movies with Margaret Rutherford.
Huh.
And they're great
I've seen some of. Yeah.
I enjoy those. I mean, they're very fluffy, but I think they're fun.
Okay, well, now that we've gone down this rabbit hole, the only reason to get a Peacock subscription is they apparently have all Columbo.
They do.
So
everything, including the 90s ABC stuff. No, you're right about that. You know what I want to watch on Peacock, and I'm happy to go down this hallway for a second. I really want to see their Brave New World.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm always intrigued by a new version of Brave New World.
Yeah.
And
spoken like a diehard Chicagoan. So
is Huxley a Chicagoan? I didn't know. I didn't realize that. And then the one that the point of Peacock that disappoints me is, it's backed by Universal.
Yeah.
And that's 100 years of movie making. It's 70 years of television making, and I'm really disappointed on how not deep the libraries are.
Yeah.
I mean, they're okay. And I have Peacock Premium because I have Xfinity and Comcast.
Right.
But I'm like, man, there's a hell of a lot more that should be on this library that isn't, as far as classic film. And yet TV, I'm like, I want to see the Snoop sisters. I want to see Banachek. You know,
it may end up being added. I
Yeah,
find that
maybe.
they tend to add on. So, and I mean, it's only been out for a little bit. So yeah, okay, wait. So Xfinity means I get premium?
Yes.
How do I activate that?
You just because it's funny. Franco was in the same situation because he gets Xfinity because of his internet.
We are boring so many people now. They're like, who cares? You know,
call your local cable. Honestly, that's what Franco called his cable company and just said, I know I've got Xfinity, so therefore I should have Peacock, right? How do I access it? Right. And they told him, they helped him out. Okay. Because it's not on Roku and it's not on Amazon Fire Stick.
I'm gonna have to figure that out because boy, was I pissed off when 15 minutes into Columbo I got hit with an ad and I was like, whoa, no, you don't get to do that.
Even on well, they have the ultimate premium that you do have to pay extra for no ads. So I've got the middle tier.
Yeah, man,
that does still have ads. But
I hate it when they do that.
I hear you, man. I understand.
So Xfinity is going to be like, oh, well, you're paying for this, but you're not paying enough.
Well, because it's technically it is I guess the basic is free,
right? But it isn't because Comcast is right, and they are supplying it, so it is being packaged as part of your cable package.
No, I agree.
Then you say now we're going to surcharge you for more. So. Yeah.
See, now Dante's happy that he learned about the sandbaggers.
All right, there you go.
So man. Yep. No. This is always a component of it. Absolutely, man. I watched on Turner, and it's sitting on my DVR. I haven't finished it yet. There's a great Roger Vadim documentary that really excites me, and I'm interested in seeing that.
Okay, so now that we're doing this, I saw that Criterion's doing has Barbarella this month. On Criterion, and I'm like, okay, well, guess what I'm doing one night. So.
Also on Amazon Prime, Barbara, and I watched this morning. I guess it's from 2010, an incredible Hammer horror, or really the whole Hammer Studios history. It's like 2.5 hours long, and they have great archival stuff from. Christopher Lee narrated it, and he was still alive then, but also Peter Cushing. And Peter Cushing co-narrated.
Was this on Amazon or was
it's on Amazon?
Huh. All right, you'll have to send me the title when we are done.
I promise you, I will. Absolutely, man. No, it's fantastic. So that's cool. Oh, here, let's see. There you go. And he's been meaning to check out Brave New World because Graham Morrison is involved. Yes, yeah. And then now I'm confused because I don't know if he's involved in the TV thing or if that's.
I genuinely don't know. You're talking to the wrong guy for stuff like that. It's weird. If you were to talk to Brian or Matt, they are so. They keep so up to date on stuff like that, and man, I don't.
Well,
I just don't.
Well, you're making the donuts, man. We're eating the donuts.
No, it's not that they're making donuts too. It's just never been of interest to me. I don't follow that news. I don't.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I just don't.
No, that's cool.
I don't know who's doing what anymore. There was a time, before I left DC in 2009, where I spent a lot of time tracking those things and paying attention, and it wasn't healthy for me. It became a lot of compare and despair for me. So
no, and as you know, and this happened to me when I turned 50. Run your own race. Yeah. Don't worry about what the guy is doing in the next lane and stuff. Jesse Owens said that, and I quite agree. Yeah. So from what I heard, Grant wrote the pilot. At least that's what Mark Bernard and Kevin Smith said. Okay, well, Mark would know. Mark's of that world, and Kevin is of that world, so that makes sense.
Yeah, they do have some inside track.
That's all cool. Oh, here we go. This is a bit niche, but what was going on with Talia around the time you were on Detective through Death and the Maidens? She was on a good path with LexCorp and suddenly driven insane.
On a good path with LexCorp. the idea in Death and the Maidens, and also the LexCorp thing was never going to stick. I remember being told that. I was like, they were planning whatever nefarious thing there. When I came into detective, I don't think I used Talia in my initial detective run. I mean, but God, that was so long ago. That was literally 20 years ago.
It's true.
In Death and the Maidens, the goal was very sincerely and with Denny's blessing was to take Raish off the table and to effectively replace him with Nyssa, or at least bring in Nyssa to a level that would allow there to be sort of a third point in that tension, so that the Batman Raish tension could have another one that would be sometimes against Raish and sometimes against Bruce and so on. And that was really the goal of it. It was simply, there were a couple things that Denny and I had discussed and wanted to try to do just to move sort of Batman along in the early 2000s. And, every one of them failed for one reason or another. People just didn't, they didn't stick. And some of them, were, I mean, DiDio hated the idea that Raish was going to disappear, for better or for worse. And I'm not saying it was wrong, and I'm not saying it was right. We all know that a character who dies in comics, in particular one who's renowned for coming back to life, probably wouldn't have stayed away forever, right? But to just try to shake things up a bit, in much the same way, one of the goals of that series was also to move Batman past this bullshit of him never being able to get over his parents, because that's crap. It's just crap. It is garbage. If a 33-year-old man, after 25 years, has not made some manner of peace, is still using them as the excuse for why he is doing what he is doing, he's lying or he is mentally ill. And if he is mentally ill, he's not a hero. And I believe absolutely that he is. Batman is a hero.
Yeah.
Which means that he cannot be crazy. He has to be perfectly rational and sane. So we really wanted to do a story where he would effectively be able to lay down that part of, the Strom and Drang he was always carrying around, and that he could be he could recognize that he might never be happy, but him being Batman is him being his best self. It isn't a punishment, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, apparently people don't want that either. We like our Batman. We like our Batman breaking down at the thought of what happened to mommy and daddy all the time.
Kelly Sue said the same thing a couple of weeks ago.
And I hate it. I think it's such a bullshit. I do. I think it is absolute crap. That's perfectly fair to say the 8-year-old boy was traumatized, and that set the direction of his life. And everything he does is as a result of that. But 10 years into being Batman, it's no longer because you miss mommy and daddy.
Well, honestly, that's why I found what Tom did with the character interesting, with alternate universe Thomas coming in, and also I have to say, James Tynion taking over for Tom is continuing the story of, okay, fine, Thomas kills Alfred, and now Bruce is dealing with life without Alfred, which I again, it opens up doors of stories And also Gordon's out of the picture right now, and Bullock is running the police department, and it's like,
oh, Jesus Christ. Well, see, and this is why I don't read it anymore, because Bullock is, and you're going to tell me in 2020 Harvey Bullock should be commissioner of police, and I'm going to tell you then you don't know who Harvey Bullock is.
well, but doesn't that also play into what you just said too about how the force is filled with dirty cops and stuff like that? And you play certainly in Gotham Central. Harvey crossed the line.
He is absolutely renowned for, right. His big thing was, I don't care about your rights, punk. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a dirty, hairy pastiche, but he's going to be commissioner. See, this is why I don't read him anymore.
I'm him.
And this is what I mean. If people are loving them, they should love them. And I don't want to take that from anybody. All I know is that I look at it and I go like, yeah, you're reading that is not how I read that terrain, man. That's just not it.
I'm him.
You know, the reason why Bruce in Death and the Maidens keeps seeing his mom is because all of his issues are with his dad. And I was tired of that as well. And it was his mom who needed to say, honey, it's okay. Because one of the things that it was about was the survivor's guilt. It was actually about Bruce not feeling bad anymore and believing he could, or that he shouldn't. And, you know, having Martha be able to, be it truthfully or in hallucination, however, come to him and say, you're free. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I cannot imagine, and this is the thing. You get into dangerous territory if you make Bruce's parents into bad guys in any way. I mean, you get into really dangerous territory because you get into a place where you are fundamentally altering the origin.
I understand. Well, you know, and also this is a, go ahead, forgive me.
No, it's just, it would be as if you said in Wonder Woman, you know, Hippolyta is actually, Hippolyta is actually the reason that Ares is back or whatnot. Yeah. If the parents in that on those origins, it changes the natures of their origins. And like I say, if you're doing that, then okay, fine. Well, it may work, but you're going to end up having to undo it.
Well, it's Flashpoint Thomas, and Flashpoint Thomas became Batman and didn't want that life for Bruce. So his motivations are coming from a good place of, no, this is never the life I wanted for you. Stop being Batman. So, I mean, that's different, I think.
Yeah, but again, if your dad's going around shooting Alfred, you have a problem.
Or no, pardon me, it wasn't Thomas. It was Bane that killed Alfred. I'm an asshole.
Oh, well.
That's a little better.
Right, because, okay.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm out of it. I don't read them.
No, I know. You don't read them. I totally understand. No, I understand.
And it would be in polite of me to comment on stuff that I don't read.
I understand. Totally.
And this is, and like I say, this is one of the reasons I don't do it. You know, Denny used to tell the story of, you know, when he stopped on writing Batman and, you know, being told, you know, are you okay with it? And he was like, yeah, I'm fine with it. And then discovering him that he was, you know, he was jogging through Central Park at 4 a.m. and he was kind of like, maybe I'm not as fine with it as I thought. You know, I believe, and I've said this before, I think to write these characters, you have to heavily invest in them. You have to be passionate about them. You carry them with you. So it becomes very difficult when I walk away for whatever reason to see what the next person is doing. And it's even harder because we still are in an era where, and I've said this before, we talked about this prior, where writers come onto books and they don't want to carry the torch forward. What they want to do is they want to burn down what came before and light their own torch off of it. And I am as guilty of that as anyone. I mean, this was a lot of my early career was coming in and going, I'm ignoring that. I'm changing this. And one of the wisdoms that I think age has given me is that comics and comics universes are additive places. They're not subtractive. And unless your job is literally being told by the company, no, this is not a direction we like, or we want a course correction. For instance, as I was told to do on Rebirth, right? You need to literally, the order was, you have to turn this ship around back so it looks like the other ship.
I'm with you.
But instead, we now have a lot of people who come on the books, and they just, they'll ignore what the other writer did entirely, and they'll either destroy it or they'll just pretend it's not there, as opposed to using it and evolving it and changing it. What they do is they come in with a sledgehammer and they start knocking out walls. And like I say, I'm as guilty of this as anyone. I wish I knew then what I know now, because I would have done a lot of things very differently.
I remember Denny saying that about the question, and even almost being embarrassed with some of the changes he made to the question compared to, what Ditko originally did.
Right. And he would say, because I remember him saying it, that, maybe I should have created my own character there. But my counter argument to that is, but there was no character in the question before Denny got him. There is no. Read those Ditko stories if you can.
Yeah, the Charlton comics are interesting.
They're not interesting. They're horrible. No, I understand. I understand how venerated Ditko is.
No,
the character design is superlative.
Exactly.
The stories are incomprehensible, libertarian wank. That's all they are. They're libertarian propaganda. That's all they are. Their objectivism is fantastic.
Yes.
Look, I have no face. And you read them and you're like, shouldn't he be punching a guy as opposed to talking about why the political elite must, You're
hilarious. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So, what Denny did there was take a design that was fallow and invest it with a character. Because when we talk about the question, even if you go to Justice League question, which is conspiracy theory question, you can't get conspiracy theory question without what Denny did.
Agreed.
And you don't ever get conspiracy question if Denny doesn't do what he does.
I like it. I bought Helltown, the novel adaptation.
I haven't picked that up yet.
I bought it years ago, and I lost my paperback. So sadly, when Denny passed, I already had his biographical novel that he did.
Yeah.
But I had to get Helltown because I remember reading it and loving it so much. So
no, I never got to read it. I remember chasing him down very early on and asking for his Bronze Tiger novel.
I didn't know he did a bronze. I'm gonna have to find that. Holy shit!
And he was like, "Oh, please don't ask for that." And I was like, "No, I want to read it. I want to read it." And I ended up getting it was photocopied. It was literally the book had to have been photocopied. And I've got it in a filing cabinet in here somewhere. So yeah,
hilarious! Oh my god! And I forget who wrote the Challengers of the Unknown novel. All those comic book novels from the 60s through the 70s and 80s. I have a great Nick Fury Shield novel that Will Murray wrote that I think is really good, incredible. No, I love that stuff. And I've talked to Marty Pasco about a couple of the novels that he wrote of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
So, oh, God. Oh, here we go. Let's, speaking of which, Charlie Lewis just finished the O'Neill question run a few months ago, the entire arc about the Republicans wearing a specific color hat to cause voter fraud.
Yeah, Denny was a little ahead of his time there.
Too much. Greg, we're at 2 hours. You want to wrap up? I feel,
Yeah, unfortunately, we kind of got him, but mostly because I gotta head to bed soon. So
it's cool, buddy. No.
We are in a zone where I'm going to sleep early. just because my daughter's getting up at 6 to do an online class, so we got to be up with her.
I understand.
Otherwise I'd happily go for another hour. But so
it's
I'm
all
sure
good.
we'll get to play catch up soon enough.
Absolutely, man. Well, and hopefully, the Mainframe Comic-Con works out as far as schedule goes, and we'll continue the conversation there. And I mean, there's always excuses to do another Rucka debrief sooner than later, and I always appreciate you coming back. And we had great questions from the audience, so I thank everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this. I'm always somewhat surprised when people show up, so thank you.
Well, and I won't deny, because Greg and I were talking before we started recording, and I'm like, God, with all the San Diego content, I'm like, maybe I screwed up. Maybe should have waited a week or whatever. I'm glad we didn't. I'm glad everybody is here and enjoyed the conversation. And everyone right now is saying, I'm here. I promise you. It's 1:00 and I'm here. Don't worry. No, this is great.
No, you guys are fantastic. Very
awesome,
much appreciate it.
All right, go to sleep, because I know you got to help Dash in the morning.
Yeah, man.
So
thank you, everybody. Thanks, John. Thanks. Take care of yourself, okay?
Take it easy, buddy. There you go. Greg Rucka, everybody. That was terrific, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much for watching, as always. Again, tomorrow night, John Con. I'm going to bring it up again. Boom. There it is. That great Tim Seeley image. The Benson sisters, Julie and Shauna Tom King. Tim Seeley, Dan Slott. Cecil Castellucci. God, I'm trying to think of names right now off the top of my head. So many creators. Judd Winnick is coming back and is going to talk to us for a few minutes. Mike Goming and Taki Soma. So many great people are just going to check in. And just like an after hours at the Hyatt or at the Hilton alongside San Diego, we're just kind of sitting at the bar watching people come by and sharing a few minutes and then walking away. So join us tomorrow night. It'll start at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you very much for watching tonight. Another great Rucka debrief. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy.